Hello, welcome back to Empty Bowl Games. Today we're going to go through the development of a system for our game Appraisal, and this system we're just going to call the safety net. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the design, sort of the purpose, and the implementation of the system. And keep in mind, the depth of this video that we will go into for this system is closer to the prototype, alpha level. There won't be final art, balancing, or even the specifics of how it's implemented will be final, since the game is still in development and things change as other things change. So for now it's just the base implementation. And the footage running in the background will be me actually making it, and I'll place other information on the screen as necessary. So let's get started. So what is the safety net mechanic? So the game loop of Appraisal is that there is what we currently call the hub. That's going to be the center where all the vendors, shops, merchants, and everything are. And then from there you go into the rooms that the actual combat takes place in. So the player goes from the hub into the rooms and fights through, let's say, for example, these numbers aren't final, but let's say the player fights through 10 rooms and then they go up a floor and back into the hub. So again, that is, hub, 10 rooms, back to the hub, 10 rooms, and that's the cycle, and you have to get as far as you can. And the player cannot be healed within the rooms, but within the rooms they earn money, and then within the hub they can use that money to purchase healing for themselves. So again, the hub room cycle continues on until the player fails. And once the player fails, that's it. The game has permadeath, so only one life per run. So this is where the safety net system comes in. It acts as our sort of second chance type of system. If the player purchases a safety net, if they fail, they drop back to the hub they were just in. So for example, if the player fails on room 8 out of 10 on floor 5, the player drops back to the hub onto floor 5, and they have to restart the entire floor, but they're still alive rather than having to restart an entire new run. So what do we want to achieve out of this system? So there are two things that I hope to achieve with this. One of them is gameplay related and the other is narrative related. So from the gameplay perspective, the system is that given that the game has permadeath, we want to offer the player some sort of way to have a second try. The goal of the game is to try to get as far as you can and as high up the leaderboard as possible, and giving them a second try at a cost feels like a good approach to doing that. So if the player can use it strategically, such as if they're not confident they can make it past the next set of rooms, they can buy a safety net to at least give them the comfort that if they fail, their whole run isn't over. We don't want it to be abusable though, so they have to use it strategically, and we will get into systems and structures for the design that will make it so that it can't be abused. And then the narrative side of it is that the story we're trying to tell is very metaphorical, lots of use of symbols, and it's not linear. So there's no like A happens, then B happens, then C happens narrative events with climbing action, climax, and resolution. The story is told more through the environment, atmosphere, art, and the design of the game. So the outer layer of the game and the design is very dark and corrupted, and the hope for this system is that it acts as another piece to that metaphorical puzzle, or another layer, both to understand the true core theme that we're trying to portray and to enhance the oppressive and cruel atmosphere of the game. First, we're going to do a planning phase for the design, just like all the details for how it works. So at the current stage of the design, here's how I plan on approaching it at this moment, though I will build in the ability to easily change and balance the design as we really tune the game and find out what really works best for the system. So the safety net, given that it makes sure that the player doesn't fail, is only supposed to be purchasable by players with a lot of money, so therefore it would only be accessible later in the run. This is to help so that if you don't get very far in the run, restarting isn't that big of a deal. But if you are pretty deep into a run, it sort of helps it make sure that your run just like doesn't end. And each time the safety net is purchased, the price of it will go up significantly. And that's how we hope to curb the abuse of the system so that you just can't endlessly buy it. How we will do the pricing exactly, I'm not sure, but again, we'll figure that out as we test it. But for now, the idea is it needs to be very expensive and exclusive to people who are later in the run. And the idea there with it becoming more expensive each time you purchase it, the idea there is to not give a hard cap to it, like only such as you can only purchase it one time a run or twice per run, but it gives it a soft cap where just over time it doesn't become financially possible to be able to purchase it. So there's technically a cap to the amount of times you purchase it, but it's not built in. As stated before though, the player will restart the floor that they're on and will retain the amount of money that they earned on their failed attempt on the floors they just went through. So let's say they're at floor 5, they go up through room 8 and then they fail and drop back. All that money that they earned within those 8 floors, they get to keep. And then once the player does purchase a safety net on that floor, they cannot purchase it again on that floor. Even if somehow, they manage to make enough money, which they shouldn't be able to, theoretically, but we will impose a hard cap there anyway. Then another important feature of it is that if you do purchase it on a floor, let's say again, you purchase it on floor 5 and you make it all the way through floor 5 to floor 6 and never have to use the safety net, then it's just gone. The money that you used to pay for it is just gone and it will not work again on floor 6. So it's only one use per floor. So we want it to be a more last resort item to buy when the player is sort of lacking confidence and hopes to just squeak out a few more rooms than they could have otherwise. That could change, of course, and possibly could send them back to the floor they purchased it on, but we will find out what works best while testing. Now for the implementation, I need to consider what it is the system needs to function. So some of the base stuff that it needs is it needs to be able to be purchased, and along with being purchased, it needs to be recorded how many times it has been purchased, so that when it comes to the increasing price, we can include that number of purchase times within the increased price. And then we also need the system to where if their HP hits 0 while the player has it, they go back to the correct floor hub that they're on, and if they don't have it, it's just a traditional game over, so we need to set up that system. And I would also like to have a UI indicator that shows that the player has purchased a safety net. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that exactly yet. My current thoughts on how I'm going to do it is it will be an alteration to the health icon within the UI to indicate that the player has a sort of protection to it. Rather than introducing a new UI icon, it would just be an alternate health UI icon that sort of, indicates that the player has a safety net for their health. So there are other specifics that we need, like, different balancing values and other functions, but these are the most important general ideas, and other things such as, the art for the shop, animations, sound effects, whatever else we need, that will come later and not be included in the video. But for now, this is, as I said, just sort of the base implementation. So now it looks like the foundation of the safety net system is complete. There's a store you can buy it from, the UI icon changes when you have it, you can't buy it on the floor you've already purchased it on, and the price goes up each time you do buy it. It sends you back to the floor you're on and goes away once you make it through the whole floor without using it. A lot of the footage that I use is just me testing it over and over, one piece at a time, make an aspect of it, test it, one more aspect of it, and test it. And thankfully during the testing I did run into a lot of problems that I didn't anticipate on accident, which happens a lot. What we're going to go into is just some of those problems that I ran into, what they were, why the problem existed in the first place, and how I fixed them. So one of the first problems that I ran into on accident was that if the player uses the safety net while on ice, it makes the player permanently have ice physics. So the ice makes the player slippery, and that works in a sort of on-trigger enter, on-trigger exit system, which essentially just means that when the player enters a zone, stuff happens. When a player exits that zone, stuff happens. So when the player is changing scenes while on the ice, they technically never leave the ice, as the ice is destroyed before its on-trigger exit functions can be called. So that was a fantastic find that I wouldn't have anticipated or thought of, and a reminder that you just need to test every little thing. I imagine if the player got to the ice again, so like let's say they used the safety net, they were permanently slippery, they got to the ice again and then left the ice, they would likely be cured of their slipperiness, but that's not something I want to figure out. I just want it solved at the very beginning. But once I found the ice problem, I knew we'd have a similar problem for the other floors that do something similar. So the water in the river rooms slows down the player with a similar system, so I fixed that problem as well. And generally how I fix that is on the functions that use those systems, once the objects, be it the ice or the river water, get destroyed, which happens when you change scenes, this function called onDestroy is called. I just gave them an onDestroy function to set the player back to their normal parameters when the scene changes with onDestroy. Another weird problem I ran into, and I'm lucky that I caught, happened with the feathers that surround the player. So if the player used a safety net while surrounded by the feathers would go with them to the next scene and into the hub. The reason this happens is because the way the feathers are set up is that they attach themselves as a child to the game object that the player is a part of. And since that object is persistent between scenes, since the feathers are now a child, the feathers come with it. I had this issue before with the feathers as well, where the summoner would be destroyed, but the feathers wouldn't, and since they didn't count towards the total enemies of the room, you would move to the next scene and the feathers would stick around. I solved that by having the summoner track the feathers it has summoned and destroying them when the summoner gets destroyed, which design-wise I like better anyway, as it gives more of a reason for target priority, so that once you destroy the summoner, all of its feathers get destroyed rather than hanging around. I think that's just a bit more fun. So that system fixed the initial problem I had with going through the door and changing scenes, but when you use the safety net, the summoner doesn't get traditionally destroyed on a scene change, so the function that would be called to destroy all of its feathers was never called. So I fixed that by, again, the exact same solution that I used for the ice floors, was by creating an onDestroy function for the summoner that activates on a scene change that just calls all the feathers to be destroyed. And why I believe it's fine to just leave it as an onDestroy function is because every single enemy needs to be destroyed before you can move forward to the next scene. Traditionally, the summoner would be destroyed anyway, so it works perfectly fine. It doesn't cause any other problems down the line. So in general, those were just some of the problems that I ran into while creating this mechanic, and I'm glad that I got it together and I made a video to show the process of it. There's still, as I said previously, a lot of values to change with testing. It's still missing final art, sound effects, animations, other systems to put together with it, but the foundation is there, and now we can move forward with it, test with it, and design it further to make the game as good as it can be. So I hope you enjoyed the process of seeing what it's like to make a system like this. See you next time. Have a great day.